Good morning and happy Tuesday again. For every decision we make, we want to look at both the pros and the cons, the benefits of doing something, and maybe the disadvantages or things to consider before you engage in whatever that is. And being in a mommune versus single parenthood is something you want to look at both sides first, because it can be challenging to live with other people, whether they're your family members or not. Sometimes I think it's more challenging to live with family members than it is to live with strangers because of the boundaries. But these are 10 disadvantages of mommunes. Look at my video as well of the 10 benefits and compare them with the 10 disadvantages and decide for yourself. Do the pros outweigh the cons and so forth? You've got to make that decision for yourself. And a lot of times, some single parents are not empowered. They're very insecure and unable to make decisions on their own, but you've got to make the decision on your own and do what's best for you and your family. Especially if you've had a situation where maybe you didn't get to live with your children for a period of time. They've been affected. There's been a lot of trauma. You want to really rethink what environment you're putting them in. And don't think just because they've had trauma that, living with other people is going to hurt them. It might not. It might actually be a benefit because it kind of takes their mind off of things and they have sort of a support system and they can feel safe. So these are 10 disadvantages of a mommune. Take it, of course, with a grain of salt. Decide what works for your family. Well, now the first one would be that there's a lack of privacy. So on some level, you're going to be giving up some level of privacy by having multiple people living in the same home. So whether it's shared bathroom, whether it's conversations, maybe you want to have a conversation with your children privately without the influence of multiple parents and other children involved. This happens in the shelters as well. You've got you want to do your own thing with your own family, and that's very difficult in a group setting. So you got to decide if this works for you or not. Number 2, the disadvantages of mommune. There's a battle of sort of your children versus my children situation. What if conflict comes up and then it's your children versus my children? I had a best friend and I, we tried to live together, and she didn't want her kids or my kids playing with her son's toys. So that was a bit of a challenge. And that can happen in these situations. You think at the time you get together based out of need or desperation, but then when you actually are living together, there might be a situation or two that could arise, between your children. So keep that in mind. It can be resolved. It's not, a deal breaker, but just know that these are situations that have to be addressed. The next thing is poor housekeeping habits. Perhaps you're a neat freak and the person you're living with is not as concerned. Maybe they only want to clean once a week and you want to clean daily. And that can be a challenge for certain arrangements. So you'd have to come up with a plan to resolve that. Either somebody would have to back off, I would imagine, and allow the other person to clean when they want to, or you have to have a schedule. Okay, so we're going to clean this day. We're not going to do that. The common areas must always be clean, the bathrooms, the kitchen and things. So you just have to sit down and have a conversation. Anything can be resolved if you're willing to communicate. Number 4. Unfair household responsibilities. Again, it kind of goes back to the poor housekeeping. Maybe this person thinks you should be cleaning every day. You think I only should clean once a week. And it can be this where one person is feeling resentful because now they feel like they're doing all the work and you're not contributing when you are, but you're just doing it differently. So just have conversations. I mean, you really just want to be kind to one another. When you're living with other people, there's got to be some level of flexibility, some level of understanding that there are different personalities, and the ultimate benefit is for our kids to be safe and for us to support and help one another. That's the most important thing. The other things, they're important, but they're not. Number 5, dating unsafe people and exposing the group to these unsafe characters. You're all living together, and it should feel like a safe environment. And you're all getting together, you're paying for groceries, you're sharing responsibility. But if one person has a person that they previously were involved with who is unsafe, abusive, or something, you got to think about that, because now you're exposing the group to it. So you want to make sure your family, your children are always safe in a safe situation. If it is not a safe situation or we don't have strong boundaries, you should not put your children in that situation, and you want to continue as a single parent. Find another mommune that is more in line with your values and your belief system. Number 6, poor money management skills. I mean, perhaps you're very good at managing your money. You put money aside. I mean, some of us have jars. I don't know if you can do that in that environment. We don't know each other. Some of us put money in jars and we leave it there. But if somebody else recognizes, hey, you're great with your money and I'm not, and they just spend, and every day they need to borrow money from you, that can be a challenge also. So you got to have very strong boundaries, and everybody needs to kind of be together in terms of community stuff. Like, we're all paying for the utilities, we're all paying for the food together, or you decide your food is your food, my food is my food, that sort of thing. But you need to have boundaries for people who are not necessarily good at managing their money. And then poor money management habits, they're in all socioeconomic levels. Like, we have somebody we're reading about all the time. She grew up, her father was one of the richest people in the world. Her mom still is very wealthy, but she just has a hard time managing her finances because her parents or her father had always said yes to her. Anything she wanted, she got. So when you bring that person next to somebody who's not always had a lot, and maybe they hold on to their money more, that's going to be a very difficult group of people to live next to each other. So you got to have strong boundaries. If you can't work it out, obviously you cannot live together. Number 7, if there's a lack of trust. A lot of times you get a lot of women in the same room, and that can be challenging for multiple women together to work together. It definitely can work, though. Don't think it can't work. It definitely can work. It just requires conversation. You need to be able to trust each other. If you don't trust each other, it's not going to work. So you want to trust each other. You want to work together. You want to enjoy each other. And do your best. If it's, anything can be worked out if you've got the maturity and you're willing. The next one is 8, jealousy. A lot of times there's jealousy amongst multiple women together. It could be jealousy over maybe your ex-husband had a lot of resources and your kids are wearing the latest Jordans and the latest clothes. And this family, unfortunately, they have limited maybe the father passed away and left them and they don't have anything, or it was domestic violence and they're trying to escape the situation. So there could be jealousy. So you want to make sure that you're addressing these issues so that you all can get along well together. Because all these little things come up. Personalities, jealousy is normal. Sometimes you're trying to help somebody and you're trying to do the right thing, but they don't see your help as helpful and they're resentful of you trying to help them. And a lot of times this happens when you've got close relationships. You're trying to help a family member, you're doing better than them, and they're now jealous because you are doing better. So you want to try to address this, work through it. If you can't, obviously it's not a good idea to be living together. The other thing is number 9, poor hygiene is an issue. Some people, not everybody likes to bathe. I hear stories about celebrities actually that they bathe once a week. Some of them have, whether it's bad breath or whatever. So poor hygiene is a big deal. You're not necessarily living in the same room, but you don't want to smell that either. And you don't want to be around, sometimes the kids might not be bathed as properly. And this can happen when you're dealing with domestic violence, a lot of stress. The parents might not take good care of themselves or their children. So you don't want to be in that environment. There has to be strong boundaries again. There has to be a way to combat this. I would say that is a deal breaker. You need to have great hygiene for everybody's benefit. Nobody wants to smell that, okay? And number 10, and then I have a little bonus too, is trauma bonding. Like, you all come together because you're in a desperate situation, because there was a trauma, and you all bond, which might not be a lasting relationship. It's possible it will be, but the problem is once the trauma is over or the situation has changed, you might not still be there for each other. And that can be a problem, because once you have that sort of close community, it can be hurtful if suddenly you're not friends anymore. So just keep these things in mind. And then I have a bonus, number 11. Potential for reconciliation with your ex. This happens all the time. So if you all come together and you're expecting to be able to manage the finances together and the utilities, and then somebody reconciles with their ex, how does that affect the household budget? How does that affect all of you? So there's a lot of things you got to think about. There are benefits to being in a mommune, obviously. There are also disadvantages. So just things to consider. Sonia Gallion-Comanica, SoniaGallionComanica.com, and the author of 10 Things I Wish I Knew as a Single Parent, where we talk about all things single parents, and love you guys. Have a great one.